my melanin is popping.
I'll tell you right now, I love my melanin.
There's actually 50 shades of melanin.
Legalize it. Yeah. Melanin. Dum 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 da da dum. 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 Dum 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 da da dum.
Highly melanated.
Dum 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 da da
Highly
dum.
melanated.
Dum 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 da da dum.
Melanated.
Dum 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 da da dum.
Melanated.
Dum 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 da da
Highly
dum.
melanated.
Dum 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 da da
Highly
dum.
melanated.
Dum 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 da da dum.
Highly melanated.
Dum 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 da da
Highly
dum.
melanated.
You gotta be ready for everything.
It just kind of happens on the air here. Wow.
Hey guys. Welcome back to another episode of Highly
Melanated.
Highly melanated. Highly
Melanation in your brain.
highly melanated. That was the extended version.
That was like a bonus.
Remix.
Shout out to Sunday for the bonus.
Hey guys, welcome back for another episode of Highly Melanated, where we melanate your palate and feed your soul. PJ Ash here.
Yushi Andrea Williams here.
Magic Johnson Red.
I knew it. I knew someone was going to
You got the magic.
That's all right, though. That's why I had a backup.
I have backup too.
That's why I had a backup, because I knew somebody was going to take mine. That's okay. I'm Blair Tate Mercury, as in a.k.a. Freddie Mercury.
That's right.
All right.
Come through.
And we are joined in the studio today with special guest.
Roscoe Boyd II with the U equals U campaign.
Okay.
What up?
Hey. Let's take this time to thank everybody who has taken the time to listen to our previous episodes. If this is your first time here, we would just like to say welcome.
Hola.
Welcome. Come on in. Have a seat. Get ready to eat.
Aloha.
Konnichiwa.
I was about to. What other ones do we know?
Annyeonghaseyo.
As always, guys, you can follow us on social media on all platforms. Instagram would be Highly Melanated Podcast. Twitter, make sure you hashtag Black Twitter. That would be H_Melanated Pod. As always, you can email us any questions, comments, concerns, ideas, conversations, voice memos. There's some stuff that's starting to come in, so we're going to start sharing these as we go on. But that would be Highly Melanated Podcast at gmail.com.
Good evening, everybody. This is Red Jeeves.
Hello.
Hello, and I am here today to sit down and serve you. If you guys had a toast and a shout out, I would love to hear it. Before I get started, I would like to actually go around in the room and tell you about the special today, which is the U equals U campaign regarding HIV. Would anybody like to give a shout out or a toast? Yushida, what would you like to start with?
I'd like to actually do a celebratory champagne toast of some Ace of Spades. Big shout out to my cousin Cam Jackson. Cam recently helped lead Wolford to a historic 30-5 season where they finished undefeated in the regular season league play and had the highest AP poll ranking in school history and advanced to the second round of the NCAA tournament. Cam is expected to become a first or second round NBA draft pick later this year. And he's actually being honored in our hometown of Winchester, Virginia at the famous Apple Blossom Sports Breakfast. So shout out to my cousin. He's doing his thing. And yeah, it's about winning.
Shout outs to him. All right, come on through, cuz. Keep winning, winning and grinning.
Wonderful. Can I get a drink?
Shining. Of course, madam.
Okay.
What would you like?
Mr. PJ Ash was kind enough to send me a list of different type of mocktails, since you guys know that I don't drink, and you know it's fun to switch it up from water every once in a while.
You got tired of water?
I personally don't get tired of water. I love water. I enjoy it very, very much. It literally is the only thing that I drink. But
so let's just tell the truth. She was here. She was like, "I'll get a water," and the next one was like a sparkling water, and it was like a water flavored.
Ooh, it just keeps building.
It does.
Okay.
You know, there's only so much you can do with water, so I figure our listeners might enjoy something a little different. So, thank you, PJ. I would also like to get a celebratory drink. Can I have a mock-mosa? It's not a mimosa, it's a mock-mosa.
What goes into a mock-mosa?
A mock-mosa is a surprising alternative to the mimosa due to using sparkling white grape juice instead of sparkling apple cider. So, thank you.
I was about to say, it's a trick!
It is a trick. But yes, I would like one of those, please.
Absolutely, madam.
And my toast goes out to my brother and my soon-to-be sister-in-law.
Oh, okay. Congratulations!
My brother finally popped the question. So it was very wonderful. It was very sweet, and they recorded it. It was very just it was wonderful because it's about time is all I have to say. They've been together for almost 10 years, so it's about that time.
It
people.
takes time sometimes.
It does, and let me say I am nobody to try to rush nobody into nothing. Y'all
okay, because I'm looking at you like
y'all know I am the
things to
last
say.
person to rush anybody into anything. But given their special situation, they have been talking for a while about getting married. So at this point, I was like, well, y'all know y'all want to do it. Just go ahead and do it. That's where I'm coming from with that. So.
Congratulations.
Shout out to my brother and my soon-to-be sister-in-law.
Shout out.
That's amazing.
I'll have a toast, please.
Absolutely, sir. What would you like?
I would like an old-fashioned, please.
An old-fashioned.
Yeah.
Classy.
I want to give a shout out to everybody who participated this weekend. I had the opportunity to be one of the producers here for Brick TV for the open house for justice. What we were doing, we were bringing random people in to talk about justice. Several different questions was, what does justice mean to you? When was the last time you saw something that was just or unjust in your community? What about the future gives you hope about justice? And what is it that you want to do itself within your community to help create justice? And there were it was really for the kids. And kids were amazing, and you can hear some of their wonderful conversations some of their wonderful things that they were thinking about and talking about what justice means to them. And it's always beautiful to see young, bright faces from all different shades just talking about what they want to do, what they want to create for the future. So I want to give my my toast to the kids as well as the adults that was, chaperoning the kids.
Shout out.
Amazing.
Jeeves, may I have a drink today?
Absolutely, sir. You are the guest.
Thank
you
so
get
much,
2
sir.
drinks.
Oh, I'm going to be pretty toasty once we're done today. I would like a celebratory toast of a sidecar, actually, for the change in our thinking around HIV since the last 35 years, really. There's a whole paradigm shift, and that's what we're really here to talk about today. I think
change.
If I'm correct. Yes, the change, the shift.
Absolutely
The
so.
paradigm shift that's happened that really changes the way black folks in particular, because that's what we're talking about, I think, and other people of color.
Yes.
Yes.
All
you are
right.
correct.
I just want to make sure I'm on the right track here.
You are.
You're on the
got
right
it.
train.
All
This
right.
the colorful train.
Well,
choo choo.
I've listened to enough episodes to think so.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry. We have a theme.
But it's a really big shift that we'll be talking about today, and I'm really happy to be here and to share this information and the life-changing and life-altering effects that it can have when we implement this information in our communities.
All right.
Wonderful.
Absolutely.
Was that just the first one, or there because you were getting two?
Oh, I get two?
You get
Okay,
two if you
see?
want.
Jeez
Look.
gave him
If
two
you want
drinks.
just 2 drinks, then you could just have 2 drinks.
How about, I think that's worthy of 2 drinks.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Well.
All right.
2 hands, 2 drinks.
We just went from sidecar to hallelujah.
All in a Sunday afternoon.
There you go.
Lift every voice and sing
Wonderful.
till earth and heaven ring. Ring with the harmonies of liberty. Go ahead, Black.
I'm sorry. You don't want to sing the rest of it?
Let every voice sing, rise high as the listening sky.
Which is a melanated sense.
Let us resound loud as the rolling seas.
All right, we're gonna end it there because if we
That
keep
gospel
singing,
choir,
we'll sing
Lord.
the whole song and then again and then again and again.
Shout out to Beyonce, the homecoming I was listening at this morning while I was cleaning my house, so that's what got me all inspired. But go ahead.
Yes. Well, since that song has so many different melanated senses into it, it seems like a good transition. As you guys know, our melanated senses is where we take the time to acknowledge the things that we either smelled, tasted, touched, seen, or heard throughout the week that was full of melanation. Does anybody have a melanated sense they want to share? I saw you taking them off. That's fine. It's okay because I write them down too just to make sure we got all 5.
Uh-huh. Red.
Do you
What
have
is
a
your sense?
melanated sense?
No, not this week.
That's okay.
No, it's all right.
That's okay.
You know what my melanated sense is? Seeing you guys here on a Sunday.
Amen.
I love you guys so
All right
much.
I'm verklempt.
So sweet.
Which is better,
sometimes
margarine or butter? Discuss.
Oh, Jeeves.
It's just too much.
Y'all really do have a lot of fun.
We
I'm
do. We have a good
like,
time.
this is amazing.
We have a good time. Do you have a melanated sense that you'd like to share?
Well,
it's okay if you don't.
I
know I
don't
just put
right
you on the
now.
spot.
Thank
It's
you
all
so
right.
much.
It's all right.
I think just smelling black people in a room is
Well, all right
a
now.
melanated sense.
That cocoa.
And- It's cocoa butter and patchouli.
Yeah.
It's a frankincense.
Really, PJ.
He said smelling blood folks in the room. I'm just
Just
gonna
so
put some
y'all know.
deodorant
Yeah,
on.
you begs don't ruin it for all of us.
No, it's fragrant.
Lord
It's quite
Jesus.
fragrant.
That could be fragrant too.
Well, hey, depending on who you ask.
Wow.
I do have a melanated sense that I want to share. So I was recently introduced to. I don't know if this group is new or how long they've been around, but my boyfriend actually had me listen to this group called Emotional Oranges. You guys know who they are? Man, they're like amazing. Like, and they're kind of like a mix of like EDM, which is electronic dance music, and kind of like R&B. They're like a mix of the two. They have a concert coming up here soon that he wants to go to. So we listened to a couple of songs, and they were actually really, really good. So I would encourage people. I know I typically tend to stay in my rotation of music that I listen to, and I don't typically like go outside of it. So I appreciate him for introducing me to something new and that I actually like really like. So it's a male lead and a female vocal lead, and they're both melanated, and it's really good. I encourage you guys to check them out. Emotional Oranges.
Okay. Emotional oranges.
So I would like to share my melanated sense. It actually goes out to Sean Carter, a.k.a. Jay-Z. During his B-Side 2 concert at the newly renovated Webster Hall, he dropped a freestyle, and was in tribute to Nipsey Hussle, and it actually sparked a debate on gentrification. And within the freestyle, he said, gentrify your own hood before these people do it. Claim eminent domain and have your own people move in. That's a small glimpse into what Nipsey was doing. For anybody still confused as to what he was doing, I'll be going to sleep hoping that Nip would visit me. That young king had a lot of jewels to spit with me, and we ain't got to leave the hood physically, but we got to leave that shit mentally. And I just thought that was so dope. Here we'll give you a clip of the actual freestyle, because he said he dropped a lot, and it was pretty amazing.
Designed to keep us trapped. They redlined it, so property crimes if you live by blast. They impress the asset and take the property back. It's a ruthless but a genius plan in fact. So now we fighting over scraps. Crabs in the barrel, but crabs don't belong in the barrel. They ain't never tell us that. So in the barrel, we gon' act like we act. We can easily get out the barrel and stand on each other's back. Whoever is on top, as long as they stay attached, they gon' pull everybody out. I was doing just that. I told neighborhood niggas to stay close. $100 million on the schedule, lay low. Tell your team to be on point in the places that they go. I never dreamed to get killed in the place that he called home. How we gon' get the power we keep cross? But y'all like to run up on the plug, so of course, that ain't it, that's a means to an end. Me and my team was playing the plug and had a plan. Sometimes we was only making $1,000 a joint. That ain't no money, but that ain't this point. So those 92 bricks was only 92,000. So y'all can close your mouth, it ain't nothing for y'all to ride. But it is something to study. We was chasing our goals, not chasing money. Niggas chasing hoes, we find that funny. I pull up in the roads, that hoe gon' want me. I'm on the hoe, I'm on the right. Somebody bounces ideas off at night. I'm going to sleep, hoping they visit me. That young king had a lot of jewels to split with me. And we ain't gotta leave the hood physically, but we gotta leave that shit mentally. Somewhere.
So yeah, we're going to move into our meal. Being that we are recording today on a Sunday, I'd figure even though we're going to release this on a different day, we're going to serve a Sunday meal. So this Sunday's dinner is going to be as followed. Hope you bought your appetites. We're going to have rack of lamb. For those that do not like lamb, we have roasted turkey.
I'll eat that too.
What do you mean you don't eat no meat? It's okay, I make lamb.
I love that movie.
So with that, we're going to have roasted butternut squash, roasted Brussels sprouts, fingerling potatoes with herbs, roasted carrots, and then on the side, we have some sauces, mint jelly, mustard shallot sauce, red wine sauce, and my favorite mushroom sauce.
Is there enough for seconds?
Sunday
I'm full
dinner.
already.
Okay.
Full?
Yeah.
All right, Soldier Boy.
Okay. Soldier Red. All right. So thank you for that wonderful them dishes about to come out in the kitchen. Ooh, it's nice. So let's just circle back around, and as you guys know, we have a special guest in the studio, Roscoe Boyd II.
Hello.
Founding steering committee member of the U=U campaign. And if you guys also recall, a couple of episodes ago, I actually gave this brother a toast because he was also a recipient of an award given from the Gay City News.
Impact Awards.
Yeah. Welcome to the studio.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for addressing this really important topic today. So,
Absolutely.
How about we start off by you just giving us your background a little bit? Just tell us about you and how this campaign came to be so important to you.
sure. So, I'm originally from Detroit, Michigan.
Wait a it.
That's right. You didn't know that, Blair, did you?
I didn't know that. I'm from Ypsilanti.
I know. Hey, yo. Hey.
Yes, you did, because I told
What
you.
up,
You
though?
told me to tell him what up, though, one
Oh,
day.
okay,
Yes.
what up, Dow? Again, I'm sorry. I just get excited when I see people from home.
I
Hey.
understand. Ypsilanti's a ways away, but it's all home in the bigger scheme of things.
Us New Yorkers in the corner, like, okay.
Whatever.
No, I'm all
You
like,
can
what?
stay mad. That's okay. Okay, so you from Detroit?
I am from
What?
the Big D, yes. And I've been in New York City now. This is my second time around living in Harlem for the last 6 years. And I've loved every minute of it, just about. I came into this work, really, it's my passion, my advocation. I don't get paid for this. I just go around talking about what U equals U can mean for our communities and how it can transform our lives. Yeah, does that give you enough of a background? Or?
Sure.
All right.
For those who don't know, tell people what U equals U campaign is.
Sure. So since 2016, we've come through some very earth-shattering kind of breakthrough technology and science as it relates to HIV/AIDS. U equals U is the new science that challenges what we've known to be true about HIV for the last 35 years. So it's really a shift in our thinking and what's possible in our communities. Very short, U equals U means undetectable equals untransmittable. And it says that people who take antiretroviral therapy, which is also known as ART, daily, as prescribed by their doctors, can achieve and maintain an undetectable viral load and have no risk of transmitting HIV to their sexual partners. That's huge, not just in terms of prevention, but even more so in terms of the way that people living with HIV, people like me, are able to navigate our situations and feel comfortable in our own skin as we think about, am I able to transmit the virus? And what does it mean for me as a person who may have based my sense of worth around my ability to not infect another person?
Okay, that's actually great information, and I think it's really important that we actually get these messages out there, because a lot of people don't know. There's still there's still such a unfortunate stigma that's attached to the HIV community / AIDS. People don't understand that it's two different things. They
Absolutely.
do coincide, but if you do some research, but we're going to try to break down just a little bit of it right now, if we could. Let me ask you, how long have you been positive?
I've been positive since 2001.
Okay.
It's a long time. And I became positive in college. And that time, even though there were antiretrovirals available, it was a little uncomfortable, to say the least, to take some of them because there were side effects, a lot of side effects. And there was the other issue of having to take them daily at a particular time, which meant that you could expose yourself if you're taking them in public. If you missed a dose, it could possibly mean that you would see your viral load go back up. So since then, I really didn't think at the time that there would be anything for me except to continue to taking antiretrovirals, and that really I would be kind of contagious for the rest of my life. And that really did affect my own sense of self and my relationships with others.
How has the U equals U campaign, changed your outlook? What are some of the changes that you've seen in terms of people, the way that they interact with each other? And do you feel like, it's kind of a loaded question, but do you feel like, people are changing their minds about how they see HIV in the community? What does that look like from the before and then the after?
Well, I think it's a really hard question. It's a really hard belief to move from a place of you can infect people and this is a crime to a thought that there is no infection, once you obtain an undetectable viral load. Mm-hmm. I think for people of color specifically, there's still a lot of misinformation about what HIV is, how it's contracted, and our sexual practices, if we want to be real today about, how HIV is transmitted, and then what are the things that black people or people in general can do, but specifically highly melanated people can do to think about this epidemic and how we can help end it. there are some really good stats out there right now in terms of what's happening in New York State. Shout out to the New York State Department of Health and the AIDS Institute, as well as what's happening in New York City. We're seeing great results with our campaigns to lower the impact of HIV in communities of color across the board, but definitely within our communities.
Okay.
You know, we're talking about this in like so many different images are coming to mind. Like in particular, there was an episode of Girlfriends where, do you know what I'm talking about? Where Tracy Ellis's Joan had a friend who was in town visiting, and then they end up like finding out that like she's HIV positive, but you know she's been living with it, and she has like a low brow detection load, and so you know she's living with the disease, as they said throughout the show. And at one point they were in the kitchen and they were cooking, and she was chopping with a knife, and she ended up cutting her finger, and it ended up being like this big thing. Like everybody like backed away from her and was like, "Oh my God!" And then she was like, "No, it's fine. Like we'll clean the cutting board." And then she made a joke about it, and she's like, "And then we'll throw the knife away and we'll torch the kitchen," And she's like, "You guys, like it's fine. Like literally, like it's just like anything else. You just clean it and then it's fine to use." And then it ended up being like this whole turning point, like that at the end of the episode, because Joan took the knife and she like ran it through the dishwasher, and then at the end she pulled it out and was like, you could tell that she was thinking to herself, do I throw this away or do I keep it? And I think the thing that was so great about that episode is it really addressed the fear that our community has around HIV and AIDS, and how that fear can lead to so much miseducation and misinformation, like you said. So just what are some of the things that you feel like are important for people to know in order to start kind of dispelling that fear and dispelling like the myths that are around HIV and AIDS? Because I think that if we can do that, then that will at least make people more open to just understanding it, if we can take away the fear that's attached to it.
I think one thing is how we think about HIV and who is HIV positive or who can become HIV positive. We saw some significant increases among black women, and the infection rates in black women can be directly correlated to some of the behaviors of black men. So we haven't really talked about what happens with black men who are incarcerated. We haven't talked about black men who are maybe bisexual and have relationships with other men. And we've limited to the space of being gay. So when we look at who gets HIV, we're not really thinking about the totality of our sexual expression. I think that would be one of the biggest things we could do is start to have an honest dialogue around sex, and sexual behavior. Black people are really repressed in terms of our thoughts about sex. We are repressed in terms of what we believe about sexual expression. And I think that contributes greatly to what we're seeing in our communities.
Okay, so let me ask you a question. In reference to the U=U campaign, I do know that you guys, as you were saying, we're in several different countries as well as different states. Can you expound on that? Can you go into more detail about that?
Absolutely.
Of course.
So the U=U campaign was founded by the Prevention Access Campaign, and that happened in the summer of 2016. It was in conjunction with really people who were living with HIV, researchers, and AIDS organizations. And it was really focused on getting this truth out because science has no publicist. We have the information, but what do we do with it? So the campaign was able to bring science to the public and help motivate the CDC to update their risk assessments, which ultimately has an impact around the world. As I mentioned earlier, the AIDS Institute has really been a leader in that, and they were instrumental in helping me as a steering committee member and helping me look at how I could help spread the word as a person of color, as a gay black man, and someone who's really committed to seeing some changes in our community and shift the perspective, not just in New York City, but across the state, on how information could transform our lives. So since that time, more than 860 organizations have joined, and 97 countries, which is literally like half the countries in the world. They've all signed on to the consensus statement, and that means that they have signed on to the belief or the understanding that U equals U really is true science, and it makes a difference in our lives.
You know, so I remember I met you during the Pride event.
That's right.
Was it last year?
Yes.
Right? And you were given, you know, because even like right now, I know you guys are like in the room and that you guys are on the, who are listening. Roscoe's stage presence, number one, like, I was like, I definitely need to talk to you because I definitely want to have this conversation here because you captivated everybody when you were speaking about it. But besides of what you were doing, the other people who are on the committee, the other members are a representation of, you know, Black men, Black women, trans men, trans women, straight men, straight women, you know, and I think it's really important that we start to really understand that it just isn't. I mean, I think most people are at this level, but you know, there's still some people that need to be taught that is just not within the gay community itself. It actually affects the community as a whole.
Sure. I mean, whether you're HIV positive or not, we are living with HIV in our society, and the prevalence rate among our communities is higher. You know, part of that has to do with the reality that Black folks like to engage with each other. We don't go outside as much as some other cultures. And so that means that there is less likely or greater chance, really, that we could become infected with HIV. So not separating ourselves from the reality that people are living with, whether they be gay or straight, whether they be cisgender or transgender, means that we all take on this initiative and look at the possibility that we could be HIV positive. That's scary, I think, for many of us to even, you know, kind of contemplate in our minds. But it's looking at it from that perspective that I think we can begin to talk more honestly about, you know, what we do in the bedroom.
Gayush.
So speaking of the undetectable, untransmittable, I would just like to ask, so what does undetectable actually mean? And then how do we know that undetectable equals untransmittable? Sure.
So thank you, Yushi. So undetectable means that the viral load, and that's the amount of virus that's in someone's body, is less than 200 copies. That means that someone has no risk of transmitting HIV to another person. Undetectable equals untransmittable means just that because my viral load is less than 200 copies, and some doctors are even going lower than that, like 20 copies, because the technology has gotten so powerful, it means that that person cannot pass it on, very simply. It can be a little convoluted if we go back to the science and look at how this happened and why it's important. But for the layperson, that's really those are the nuts and bolts.
Mm-hmm. So if a person is on ART, for example, and they have a partner who's not infected per se, should this person get an emergency PEP? Should they be taking PrEP? And then also, what's the difference between those three treatments?
Sure. So let's start with PEP. Imagine that you've been exposed to HIV, someone who's not undetectable, and you're concerned. You can go to the doctor, and within 72 hours, 36 hours, 72 hours, depending on what doctor you're going to see or medical institution, and you can take a medication that will prevent HIV from developing in your system. You'll take it for, I think it's 3 months now, and over that course of time, you'll regularly check in with your doctor, and the efficacy of it is really high. So it means that you probably won't become HIV positive. Mm-hmm. There's also PrEP, and PrEP is being advocated very much like the once-a-day pill that women often take to prevent pregnancy. At one time, when we think about the history of the pill, it was taboo. It wasn't something that was commonly used among society. And then that changed, you know, and women saw it as an opportunity to really keep themselves from having a child when maybe they didn't want to have a child. Amen?
Amen.
All right.
Okay.
Along the same lines, PrEP is used pre-exposure prophylactics. It is a pill, essentially, that you take once a day that prevents someone who is sexually active and in perhaps a higher risk group from getting HIV. You know, the great thing about PrEP is that the uptake is really good in some communities. Among black folks, it's not as great. And some of that is about the marketing. Some of that is about the understanding of what, PrEP means. But right now, there's a huge focus at organizations like Black AIDS Institute out in Los Angeles to get black women to understand the power that they have to take control of their bodies, to take control of their health by taking PrEP. And this is, again, part of a much larger conversation around sexuality and how black women in particular trust our men, trust their partners, and sometimes that trust leads to HIV.
Isn't that true? So I just wanted to also ask, does this help with those who have full-blown AIDS?
So there is no discrimination when we talk about U equals U. The challenge here is that being undetectable is – the challenge is that when we talk about being undetectable, there's often a desire to compare people who are undetectable to those who choose not to take medication. And that is dangerous because it means that somebody who otherwise would, not be looked at in this way or in this category is somehow ostracized by medical professionals and encouraged to get on medication when perhaps that's not what they want to do. As a part of the U equals U campaign, a lot of what we do is in the stigma associated with that, and we recognize each individual's own choice to make a choice, around how they're going to use the science and the information. Somebody who has full-blown AIDS is someone who has left their HIV unchecked. And what that means is that over time, the body develops, the body is less able to resist the infection, and the viral load goes way up, T-cell counts go way down, and the person ends up with full-blown AIDS. It becomes a difficult issue for us, because you want to make sure that people are doing the right thing to protect themselves. But at the same time, let me see, how can I say this? It's not always the easiest conversation to have.
Right.
And I guess that's why I'm struggling a bit, because full-blown AIDS is the result of not taking care of your diagnosis, okay? It is the reason why we see high rates of transmission. And the more black people, the more people in general, but black people, highly melanated people, start to uptake on PrEP and also look at their HIV status and become clear or honest about what that is, not kind of shying away from a test. That's really what it's about. The less we'll have to deal with this issue of full-blown AIDS.
And that's so much of the problem is there is this level of avoidance. People don't want to find out whether or not they do have AIDS or not, because then they have to deal with the stigma that's attached to it. And I think so often people think that, okay, if I just don't know, then I don't have to do anything. But that's so detrimental. Well, it's just causing a bigger problem at the end of the day. And so much of what you said is just so much, and I'm glad that you're here to advocate for it, because so much of it is about taking away this stigma so that way people can become educated and become less fearful, and we can start to really dissipate this problem in our community.
Absolutely.
How successful do you think? Because a lot of times we talk about, and this is kind of like a reoccurring question that I have in all of the episodes, but a lot of times we want to make sure that we're doing what we need to do to try and help out whatever campaign or issue it is. But what are healthcare providers doing? Are they kind of making it a part of their staple to say, hey, if you're sexually active and you're a teen, you're younger, maybe you don't have to know about HIV, but even in schools, teaching it to say, hey, this is the standard. If you're actively having sexual encounters, that you should also be doing this? Is there any type of, I guess, push for that, or?
Well, I guess that depends on what agency or, what municipality. There are certainly in New York State, educational opportunities and nonprofits that are working on the community level to ensure that young people have this knowledge. U equals U is really designed for people who are HIV positive and want to maintain a viral load that is undetectable and cannot infect another person. So if you're talking about education, it's about helping young people understand that HIV is not a curse, that there is a solution, that you can live a long and healthy life just like anybody else.
It's not an automatic death sentence.
It is not. And it was 35 years ago.
Right.
It was 20 years ago. It was 15 years ago.
But not today.
And I think that's the biggest message that we can take home or take to our communities.
Okay.
So I want to ask just a few questions, and I'm scrolling through the website, and on the website itself, which is www.preventionaccess.org, and I will also want to address the issue of, even though some people want to take PrEP or PEP, that the idea of that is based on HIV, AIDS alone. It's not based on any other STIs that you can possibly, infect yourself with, which is like, a few years ago, there was a super strain of gonorrhea that was going around, chlamydia, syphilis. The syphilis rates have gone up within the state. It was a big jump. I can't know off the top of my head. I'm going to look it up as we speak. What can we do, us as a community, to help people understand that what it really means to take care of your body, and what does it really mean to actually don't be afraid to go to the doctor? Like, how can I tell my friend who I know, let's say I have a friend who I know is off the chain, just doing everything impossibly, and not really caring about the other person that he's with or she's with. How can I, without pressure, is there a program that U equals U provides that would help assist that?
So U equals U is very focused. We don't talk about gonorrhea infection. We don't talk about syphilis infection. We don't talk about any other STIs. And the reason for that is because the whole focus is really about preventing HIV. Mm-hmm. There are co-infections that can happen, and those co-infections happen because people aren't taking care of their health. If someone is going through the process of getting tested because of HIV, the likelihood is that doctors are also going to find any other STIs that might be present. Those are opportunities to have real conversations around sexual behaviors without judgment. New York State has done a really great job in their sexual health clinics in looking at how they approach people who come into the clinic for one particular test and really need all of them. So it's a delicate conversation. How can we as individuals think about this, or how we can combat it? They're really two separate issues, and I think the more we're able to differentiate between them, the more successful we can be at lowering the rates of infection. But by lowering the rates of infection, we're also able to identify these other STIs that happen as a result of unprotected sex.
You said something just really quick in there, and I just wanted to like maximize just those two words, without judgment. Because a lot of times I think people just are so quick to judge someone. Again, number one, there are many different ways that someone can contract HIV.
Some people are even born with it. Exactly.
I had a young gentleman who did an episode of the DU Project, and he came on and he spoke, and he was born with it because his mother contracted it to him while she was pregnant. He is 30. Mark Anthony Wilson is 30, and shout out, he spoke very openly about this, so I'm not putting his business out there, number one. But he's 34 now, and undetectable as well. I think that people should understand that there are ways that you can actually live a long and healthy life, obviously, if you are sticking to your regimen that the doctor is giving you and you are just doing everything that you need to get done. But it starts with us having these conversations and not judging each other for whatever it is that we do.
So to your point, it only takes one time to get HIV. One instance of unprotected sex, one instance of blood transfusion. That used to be the case, but not any longer. And once that happens, your life can change. And so being able to talk about this with young people, being able to talk about this with adults, it's not somebody who necessarily is going out and having, 25 sex partners a week. They might be there too. But black women who are married are getting HIV. That is real. And because we're not talking about it openly, we have seen across the country some of those statistics and rates go up. I think a big part of it is looking at why we judge other people who have HIV. Mm-hmm. In my life, I've seen a lot of it, directed at me because I'm a pretty public person in terms of my status, in terms of being on air, in terms of talking on CBS Evening News and BET. It becomes kind of a lightning rod, for other people's issues. Mm-hmm. The challenge really is to look beyond the limitations of prejudice, because we all have it. But the question is, why do we have it? Is it because you think that these people are somehow less than or not worthy, or is it for some other reason? So I think that is a part of the conversation in terms of judgment.
Okay.
I wanted to actually go back to what you just said, PJ. You just mentioned this friend of yours was born with HIV. So I wanted to know, is there a specific age limit when taking ART? And can it be given to infants that do get it from their mother during childbirth or breastfeeding? Can they also take it?
So there are some limitations, and forgive me for not being able to quote that exactly, but there is an age limit in terms of how young someone can be to take antiretrovirals. And there's also some good news about babies who are born with HIV who can somehow, their status can become negative.
Wow.
Yeah, there's some options there.
I think that you're in such a unique position for this advocacy, especially because you've been on both sides of the fence, so to say. So when you're talking to people who, don't have the same experiences as you, and like people who are having trouble seeing what that other side of the fence is like, meaning people who are HIV negative, looking at the perils that people who are HIV positive go through, what to just kind of help dispel the different stigmas and myths that are around that. Can you just cite one specific thing or example from your own personal perspective of something that was dramatic that you learned or didn't expect to know, or just something that was kind of eye-opening for you? Do you see what I think that if we can get people to understand, the things that we think are true aren't true. And I think a lot of times people can't really understand that until they experience it for themselves. That having those kind of testimonials can really at least help people open up their eyes a little bit. So is there anything that you didn't know before, you had a positive status that you wish that you had known before, or something that was, shocking or interesting for you to learn or know?
Wow. I'm going to have to sit on this for a minute, because I think on my journey, there have been lots of moments where I've had to really rethink either behaviors or rethink the way I approached my relationship with myself even. Mm-hmm. HIV can change how you look at the world, because the world looks at you differently if they know that you have it. Mm. And, when I was 21 years old, my God. When When I was 21
Time
years
flies,
old,
right?
it really does.
God.
Wow. But when I was 21 years old, I had the world in front of me, and I was singing, and it was an amazing time in my life. But at the same time, I couldn't be who I was or even explore who I was sexually because there was this fear that somehow I might infect another person. Since that, things have changed. When I think about 2016, when I joined the HIV Stops With Me campaign in New York State, that really put me on a different path because I was talking about something that was tangible and real where I could make a difference in people's lives. I don't know if that really gets to the heart of your question, though.
Well, I think it does, because I think a lot of times, like, people feel like this isn't their issue until it hits them personally. It's not their issue until it is their issue, And I think that that's part of the reason why people don't educate themselves, people don't inform themselves, because they don't feel like they need to.
You know something? I'm just going to jump in there really quick, because that they're about, and I'm just going to bring it back to what I normally do, which is music and movies. There's only a few movies out there that has ever been made that can just make me cry off the top of my head, and Philadelphia is definitely one of them.
Yes.
And that when that came out, at that time also I had an uncle who passed away who had full-blown AIDS. And I recall the feeling that was going on my father's side of the family, my stepfather's side of the family. And I could remember understanding or watching Denzel's character when he was looking at Tom Hanks' character, and at first feeling disgusted, but then after doing the research and actually, defending him and seeing him every single day, and, understanding that we have these ideas and we think that, it ain't got nothing to do with me. Because remember when he first came into the office with him and he spoke to him and he told him what his problem was, and then Denzel's character just slowly moved away to the other side of the office. And this came out again. Well, they did a little documentary about it on World AIDS Day, which is December 1st. And I remember just watching it again and just bawling, crying. And then right after that, watched Boys on the Side and just bawled, crying. I don't know if you ever saw Boys on the Side with Whoopi Goldberg, Drew Barrymore. Excellent movie. I mean, every single time Whoopi starts singing, I'm bawling in tears because I've lost so many of my friends as well. So I think that once we get past this judgment, like judging people, to understand that you don't know what that person's story is. You don't know what that person had to go through, to what they deal with behind closed doors. There are so many cases where people get the infection based on sexual abuse, or there's drug use as well. But there's so many people that are out there, and it wasn't their fault.
Right. Well, that's looking at the totality, like the whole spectrum of what it is to be HIV positive. There are people who go to church, who sit in the pews every Sunday, and they may be HIV positive.
To your left or to your right.
Right. But do they have a way of continuing to engage in their faith and also addressing their health condition? Churches should be a place of healing. They often aren't. They're a place of judgment and ridicule. And that level of stigma can create such anxiety and pressure within people who are HIV positive that, maybe you don't want to go to church anymore because of your fear around how you might be perceived. I think there are opportunities in our community to really take the issue of HIV and look at it as an opportunity to heal. An opportunity to have real dialogue around sexual behavior, around belief systems and structures, around stigma, and how those things continue to weigh on us and prevent us from actually achieving greater health as a community.
I think just speaking from my experience, I think it's just, I remember going back to when I was in high school and just being, all of a sudden out of the blue becoming like this germaphobe, right? And I remember a lot of it was triggered by the fact of me coming to the realization that I'm into dudes kind of thing. So
he's the homosexual,
right? And I was just all like, oh my god! I was like, what does this mean? And I remember being it was almost crippling because I was just all like, I don't want to do anything. I don't want to act on anything. I don't want to. And it wasn't just solely with guys, because I mentioned on the show before that I'm bisexual. So it wasn't just with guys. It wasn't just with women. It was just like I just didn't want to do anything, And I remember and if you think about it, that stunts your growth and your growth personally. It stunts your growth and your experience. And I remember just having to tell myself, all right, I have to research it. I have to look into it. I have to figure out what it is for me. And fortunately for me, I was strong enough to be able to all right, I need to just calm my nerves. But there's so many people that just can't just get out of that loop.
Well, I mean, a part of it is looking at your sexuality. And being bisexual, you all are a small percentage,
right? In
terms of how people think about it.
Right.
I think you all are probably a much larger percentage than we're really willing to acknowledge.
Right.
And that's because of some of the stigma around sexual orientation. My question is really around, how do you as a bisexual person navigate that in relationships with men and with women? Because there are perceptions around sleeping with men that at some point you are at higher risk. And, maybe you are somehow engaging with women in a way that puts them at higher risk, and that's not you personally. That is just how we think about sexual behavior and what risk looks like when you're dealing with a man who enjoys sex with women and with men, or enjoys being with men and women.
So I wanted to ask you, I was looking on the website preventionaccess.org, and there was a particular line that I wasn't too clear on. It said some people experience a transient viral increase called blips.
That's right.
Is it correct for me to assume that this is a viral load increase?
So technology is not perfect. The
Okay.
science is not perfect. And so sometimes you will see in your viral load testing what they call blips. Blips are not something that we are concerned about because in the longer run and the bigger scheme of things, they're really not significant. But we really did need to speak to that specifically because that's one of the big concerns that doctors have, or one of the reasons why this information is not being shared with the general public.
Is there something that can cause a blip to happen, or is it just something that randomly may just pop up?
It could be the test. It could be, sometimes sometimes viruses in your system or in your body can show up as more present than they really are. So there are other reasons, but it's not something to be concerned about.
I think it jumps in the similar actions of a computer that has glitches. It's not something that happens on a regular basis, or this is my understanding of it. Because our bodies are complex as it is. And even now, as we're going through these season changes, and with this bipolar weather system that we have, some people get sick really quickly, some people don't. I know I get sick really quickly with this whole up and down weather, and I have to make sure that I take care of myself. But that doesn't mean that I'm more susceptible to getting sick. It's just that maybe this right now my allergies are starting up again, but next week I won't have allergies, but then the week after that it will. So I think it's kind of similar to that, but it just, as long as the person is still taking care, they're taking their meds regularly, they're seeing their doctor regularly, and whether they have a counselor, whether they have do U equals U has counseling sessions as well, or no?
No. So, U equals U is a movement.
Just a movement. Okay. Okay.
And we really rely on volunteers around the world to get the message out there. It's motivated by activists, so there are spokespeople now for U equals U. The great thing about it, as it relates to the Prevention Access campaign, is that we've been able to get this message out there in a way where not just one person is the voice, but we're all representatives, and state agencies have taken on this message and made it their own.
So speaking of that, how can one volunteer or even donate to the cause and, just overall just join the fight?
Sure. So the biggest way is to look at preventionaccess.org. That is the organization of which I am a steering committee member for U equals U. It is the organization that really moved this movement forward and created it from its inception to get the message out there. So just simply by accessing the information, simply by talking to other professionals, health professionals about it, engaging with our community around it, those are some very simple ways. If you want to give, I'd be shameless. It's a shameless plug. It's a shameless plug. I think that the Prevention Access campaign or preventionaccess.org is one of the best ways that you can do that as we mobilize and organize, not just here in the United States, but we also look at our global impact. Mm-hmm. There are also ways to get involved with your State Department. If you want to reach out to me, Roscoe, at preventionaccess.org. I'll be happy to direct you to the individuals who can help you get involved at a local level because we are active across the country and around the world.
All right.
All around the world. That's amazing. We're so glad that you came in today. As you've noticed, probably, throughout listening to other episodes and our episode today, we're a bunch of foodies here. We love to eat. So
get in my belly.
Of course, we have to end this conversation with dessert. And
oh, I did it, guys.
You did it. Good
job. Is that a first for you?
Progress.
He's been working on it.
I've been
working on
it.
That's
okay,
gross.
I'm sorry. You trying to draw it out now?
All right.
Go ahead.
Okay, PJ Ash in the building.
Shout out to Arthur Ashe.
Yes.
Rest in peace.
Mm-hmm.
Rest in peace. So, to end things off, if you could just give us just tell us what your favorite dessert is. Like, what is your go-to sweet tooth item? What's the dessert of choice? And then along with that, just kind of give us and the listening audience your final thoughts, just the lasting impressions that you want people to take away from this conversation, things that you want people to think about, or just in general the impact that you hope that this conversation has had on them.
Ooh, well, first, my favorite dessert is red velvet cake.
You better come through.
Buttercream icing. That's
okay.
Wait, buttercream ice cream or
buttercream icing, yes.
Or cream cheese icing.
Oh, that's good too. But buttercream.
Buttercream.
Now I can appreciate you because I have a feeling about cream cheese icing only belongs on carrot cake the way God intended. It is not for red velvet cake.
Excuse me, how come you can't just have both on them? I don't understand.
No.
Okay, we can layer it. What?
PJ, I agree.
Thank you.
Well, this is Roscoe's dessert.
Well, it is
buttercream icing.
I'll have a slice because it has buttercream.
Thank you so much.
I will too.
Right.
Thank you so much. It is delicious. And then the other thing that I would probably leave you all with today is that we're in a different period of time. Mm-hmm. The paradigm has shifted. There's now science that backs up the reality that we can control HIV. We can actually eliminate it. New York State has been involved in ending the epidemic by 2020, which was a huge undertaking. And so far, we're on track to ending the epidemic by 2020. That is groundbreaking, But what it really needs is more people on the ground who are willing to step up and to talk about it in a meaningful way, to have discussions in your communities, in your families around HIV and the impact it has and how we can actually prevent it. So that's probably the biggest thing I'd like people to take away is that, this is a time of transition and we've moved from a paradigm of people dying and being infectious and being able to transmit the virus to a time where we don't have to have that concern.
Wonderful.
Nice.
Right.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Roscoe Boyd II.
Thank you for having me. This has been a lot of fun. A little anxiety, but I'm Woo!
It was great.
You don't have to be anxious about it.
Very
I told you would have fun and what we do here at Highly Melanated before we even have our own conversation with just the four of us on the mic. We really like to have guests who come on who can actually speak to the community to help them. And for the longest, this has been a conversation that I really wanted you to come in the studio and talk more about. And I'm just glad you did it. So thank you for blessing the mic with your knowledge and your gift.
Thank you. This is like really, it's a part of me, and it is very important from a heart space that we need to have these conversations, and even about sexual expression. Like, that's a huge part of HIV transmission and why we see the rates in our communities that we do. So I'm going to leave that there, for hopefully some other opportunity, maybe not me, but certainly an opportunity to talk about it.
Or maybe you.
Maybe
I'll have a lot to say about it.
Well,
that's what we want.
Come on back.
Because truth be told, we have yet to have a conversation we have yet to do our salt and pepper. Let's talk about sex, baby.
Let's talk about sex, baby. Let's talk about you and me. Let's talk about
all the good things and the bad things that may be.
Let's talk about sex. Let's talk about sex.
On that
Coming up on an
note,
episode of Highly Melanated.
on that note, guys, want to thank you all for taking the time to listen to another episode of Highly Melanated. Please, I don't normally say this, but I'm going to start saying this more often. When you guys listen to these episodes, don't just hit like, don't just comment, but share these conversations. If you know somebody says anything, it would be great if you guys would just press play and share this with your friends, especially like an episode like this, that you know that this is a conversation that's important for other people to have, because that's the purpose of Highly Melanated. That's what we are. That's what we do here. So again, as always, you can follow us on Twitter, H_Melanated Pod. We're going to get a little better with the postings of that. I just hate Twitter. You can follow us on Instagram. That's Highly Melanated Podcast. You can email us any questions, comments, concerns. Pretty soon there's going to be a video component added to this, so we're gonna start expanding this, and we're also going to be starting some panel discussions. So be on the lookout. It's about to be on and popping. It's about to be on and popping, y'all. Popping, y'all. Okay. Yeah, so on that note, guys, just, as we always say, peace, love, and
HIV prevention.
Hey.
You equals you.
You campaign.
Talk to your friends. Share the message.
Because knowledge is power.
The more you know. Big star.
All right, guys.